Harris, they found him in the county hospital this morning.
Yeah.
Somebody got a hold of him 2 nights ago and gave him a good working over. If we're lucky, we'll make it.
What do you mean?
He's not supposed to last out the day.
2:35 p.m. Ben and I left the office and went immediately to the county hospital, where we were allowed to briefly interview the narcotics suspect, Jocko Harris. He was in a critical condition with a fracture of the skull. He gave us a statement in the form of a dying declaration. He admitted being the contact man for 17-year-old Johnny Demring, and he admitted also that he had kept the boy supplied with enough narcotics to keep the neighborhood teenage demand for the stuff fully satisfied.
Seemed like a good kid. Never thought he'd turn.
What do you mean, Jocko? How'd he turn?
Why do you think I'm here?
You mean he's the one who worked you over?
Yeah.
Where is he, Jocko? Do you know?
No.
Do you know where he's staying? Do you have any idea at all?
No. Stole all my stuff. Every ounce.
What was it, heroin?
Yeah. Listen.
Yeah?
Get him. Fast. He's got enough junk to start a war.
You're in the cruiser car of a Metropolitan Police Department. You receive a routine radio call.
All units, attention all units. Pick up and hold for investigation the following vehicle. 1948 Ford, 2-door sedan, black white sidewall tires.
There are many cars that fit this description. You listen for more facts.
This car will have extensive damage to right front end. License number 9 Robert 9 707. In the 7 column, 9 Robert 9 707. KMA 367.
Now you can pin it down to one. It's the same with cigarettes. There are many king-size brands to choose from, but when you know all the facts, you'll make your choice Fatima.
Here are those facts. Fatimas are the same in length and circumference as any other king-size cigarette. 85 millimeters long, 1 1/64 inches around.
And Fatima filters the smoke exactly the same long distance.
But in Fatima, the difference is quality.
Fatima gives you extra mildness, a much different, much better flavor and aroma.
You get all the advantages of extra length, plus Fatima quality, which no other king-size cigarette has.
Fatima, best of all king-size cigarettes. Definitely the best quality in its class, but the same price as the cigarette you're now smoking. Next time, buy Fatima.
Wednesday, April 30th, 9 a.m. The hunt for 17-year-old Johnny Demring was intensified. To our knowledge, because of the information we'd gained from narcotics peddler Jocko Harris, the teenage youngster had a large store of high-grade heroin, which we knew because of his inexperience he was unaccustomed to dealing with. In his hands, the narcotics immediately became a lethal weapon. We knew that Johnny Demring had only one market to deal in, only one type of customer he was acquainted with, the teenager. In previous transactions, we knew that the youngsters received only a low-grade type of narcotic, highly diluted. We knew that if Demring succeeded in dispensing the highly concentrated store that he had on hand, and the juvenile customers he served tried it on themselves, it would very likely result in death. 3 p.m. Wednesday. Despite all our efforts, Johnny Demring and the store of high-grade narcotics which he'd hijacked from Jocko Harris were still missing. Wednesday, 12 noon. We began rechecking every one of the possible sources that might lead us to the suspect. One of them was the boy's mother, Mrs. Frances Demring. We talked to her at work. She was employed as a multigraph operator in the mailing department of a large downtown department store.
Not since the last time you talked to me, Sergeant. I haven't heard a word from my boy. Nothing at all. Have you heard anything?
Well, yes, ma'am, in a way. We've got an idea he's still somewhere in the city. That's why we figured we'd come back and talk to you again.
Have you been in touch with your relatives in town recently, Miss Demring? I mean, those that Johnny might possibly contact?
Yes, there's just my sister and my mother.
Yes, ma'am.
I guess it just wasn't to be right from the start. Johnny's father ran away, you know. Tried my best after that. Never seemed to be enough. Suppose there's no getting away from it. A boy needs a father. You can try all you want. They still need a father, some kind of discipline.
Mm-hmm. How about the relatives you have out of town, Miss Demring? Any word from them at all about Johnny?
No, Sergeant, nothing. Would you excuse me, please? This run here's finished. I have to get it off the machine.
Sure, go right ahead.
Yes, a terrible thing, Johnny getting mixed up in all this. Seems no matter how you try, it's never enough. Never enough.
Do you have any idea at all where Johnny would most likely go in town if he didn't want to be seen, Mrs. Demring?
Where'd he go? No, I wouldn't know that, Sergeant. First place, Johnny's never really been in trouble before.
Well, how about Johnny's school friends, ma'am? Would there be any one of them he might possibly contact in a jam?
None that I haven't told you about before, I don't think. Evelyn. She's the only one I suppose Johnny'd go to if he needed help, if he was in trouble.
That's his girlfriend at the high school, isn't it, Evelyn Maxwell?
Yes, that's right. Sweet girl.
How about a girlfriend Johnny was supposed to have downtown somewhere, Mrs. Demring? Would you know anything about her?
Nothing really, no. Her name was Betty, I think.
You have no idea where she lived downtown?
No, I don't, Sergeant.
Well, all right, ma'am. Thank you very much. Appreciate it if you'd notify us if you hear anything about your son at all.
All right, Sergeant, thank you. Tomorrow's Johnny's birthday, you know, I meant to tell you. Always expect Johnny home on his birthday. Seems no matter where he is, how he's tied up with his school or sports or something, Johnny always makes it home for his birthday.
I see.
I wonder how it'll be tomorrow. He's never missed once. Not once.
Well, if he shows up, I guess you can count on one thing, ma'am.
What's that?
He's going to have to miss next year. 2 p.m. Ben and I picked up a glass of milk and a hot dog for lunch, and then we continued making a check of Johnny Demring's closest friends. Next in line after his mother was Demring's high school girlfriend, Evelyn Maxford. We located her at her home, a tall, attractive brunette, nicely dressed and well-mannered. She seemed unusually nervous as we interviewed her.
I haven't heard a word, Sergeant. I know tomorrow's his birthday. The mother's expecting him home. I know he won't come, though. I'm sure of that.
How are you sure, miss?
Well, I just know that's all.
I'd like to ask you again.
Yes?
Are you sure you haven't heard from Johnny Demring recently in the past 2 days or so?
No, that's what I told you. Don't you believe me?
Do you know why we're so anxious to locate Johnny, Miss Maxford?
Well, I think so. It's about the narcotics business. You say Johnny had a hand in it. He was selling those things to the kids. I still don't believe it myself.
It's a lot more than that, the way it stands now, Miss Maxford.
What do you mean?
Well, when he was at school, Johnny was kept supplied with narcotics by a man named Jocko Harris. He's what we call a pusher, kind of an in-between supply man in the narcotics trade.
Mm-hmm.
Well, 2 nights ago, Johnny caught up with this Harris. He beat him up badly enough to send him to the hospital with a fractured skull. And then Johnny stole every bit of narcotics that Harris had in his room, some of the strongest stuff you can buy on the market. That's why we want Johnny, Miss Maxford.
I don't think I understand. What does it mean?
It means that most of the teenage kids Johnny's been supplying stuff to have been getting fairly weak grades in narcotics. If you get some of this stuff to them and the kids start taking it, it might prove too strong for them. If they take too much of it, it could kill them outright.
Mm-hmm.
Now, you see what we're up against. We've got to find that boy. We've got to find him soon.
Couldn't you talk to his mother? Maybe she could tell you something.
Well, we already have, miss. She couldn't tell us anything. That's why we halfway depended on you.
Why do they have to put it in my lap? Why does it have to be me? I liked Johnny for a while. I don't know what to think now.
Well, have you heard from him, Miss Maxford? Now, there's no reason to be afraid. You'd probably feel a lot worse if something happened to one of the high school kids, wouldn't you? Miss Maxford?
I got a call from him yesterday, Johnny. He wouldn't tell me where he was. I asked him, but he wouldn't tell me.
What else did he say?
He knows everybody's looking for him. He doesn't know about the stuff that he stole, though. I'm sure of that. He doesn't know what it could do.
Did he make any dates with you? Did he want to see you?
Yes, he wants to see me. He wants me to meet him tonight.
Where?
Excuse me.
Yes, go ahead.
Hello? Yes? I don't know. I don't really. What? 7 o'clock, all right. Yes, I'll meet you then. All right, goodbye. That was Johnny just then. He wanted to make sure I was going to meet him tonight.
When?
7 o'clock tonight, right near Westlake Park.
Which side, miss?
The west side, Sergeant. I hope to God it's not true.
What's that?
The narcotics he stole from that man. You said they were powerful?
Yes, we did.
Johnny's been taking them for 2 days.
6:45 p.m. Together with 2 other men from Juvenile Bureau, Hurst and Ty, we drove near the appointed spot along the lake in Westlake Park where Evelyn Maxford's meeting with the teenage suspect Johnny Demring was to take place. We staked out at a reasonable distance, and Miss Maxford went ahead to the meeting spot. As far as we could see, there was no sign of Demring. Somebody on the opposite side of the lake was playing a phonograph. The music came over faintly across the water. We watched the Maxford girl cross the long stretch of grass down to the lake. She approached the shore. We saw her stop and look down.
Joe, let's go. Come on. Yeah.
We ran all the way as fast as we could get there. When we got close enough, we found out the reason for the scream. He was lying face up on the ground near the edge of a small clump of trees close to the water. He was a good-looking boy, dark hair, good build. Took only one look, and you knew right away he was too young to be dead. You could argue for a week, but you wouldn't change it. He was dead. The girl stood over him, her face in her hands, crying.
No marks on the body, Joe. None at all.
Well, that must be it, huh? An overdose?
It's the way it looks to me. We better get her out of here, hadn't we?
Yeah. Miss Maxford? Come on, Miss Maxford.
Yes, Sergeant. It's all right. It's all right now.
We'll have one of the other men drive you home. We can take care of whatever has to be done here.
He was a good boy, Sergeant. He was smart. How'd he ever get started in such a thing? How could he ever make such a mistake?
Well, he's got the best excuse in the world, miss.
Yes.
He was 17.
The story you have just heard was true. The names were changed to protect the innocent.
On May 2nd, a coroner's inquest was held at the county morgue, Hall of Justice, City and County of Los Angeles, State of California. In a moment, the results of that inquest.
And now here is our star, Jack Webb.
Thank you. Friends, it makes us very happy to know that so many of you have switched to king-size Fatimas. Now, this actual sales report I have here shows that in state after state, more people are smoking Fatimas every day. In the first state, Fatima sales are up 97%. The next state sales up 114%. Still another state, 117%. And still another, 69%. Well, those are just a few. Now, in my opinion, that can mean only one thing. That thousands and thousands of smokers, coast to coast, agree with what we've been saying. Fatima is the best of all king-size cigarettes. If you haven't smoked them yet, remember this. Fatimas cost no more than the cigarettes you've been smoking. Fatima gives you all the advantages of extra length, plus Fatima quality, which no other king-size cigarette has. So tomorrow, buy Fatima.
At the inquest, the coroner's jury ruled that 17-year-old John Andrew Demering had administered himself an overdose of narcotics and thus had taken his own life. All others involved in the juvenile narcotics ring, a total of 8 persons, were tried and convicted under the State Narcotics Act. They received sentences as prescribed by law and are now serving their terms in the state penitentiary. You have just heard Dragnet, a series of authentic cases from official files. Technical advice comes from the Office of Chief of Police W.H. Parker, Los Angeles Police Department.
Fatima Cigarettes, best of all king-size cigarettes, has brought you Dragnet, transcribed from Los Angeles.
Stay tuned for Counter Spy, next on NBC.
And yes, an episode of Counter Spy did follow that Dragnet episode that aired at 9 o'clock Eastern Time on Thursday, September 6, 1951. We will hear a little later an episode of Dragnet of Counter Spy from 2 years earlier. We'll hear that coming up in a little bit later in this edition of Classic Radio Theater with Wyatt Cox. In just a couple of moments, we'll hear an episode of Inspector Thorne starring Stotts Cotsworth that aired 10:30 on this same Thursday night, September 6, 1951. But in a moment, we will hear a look at the news from 73 years ago today. Just one word more. Isn't it interesting that there was a condemnation of illicit and illegal addictive substances at the time, marijuana and goofballs and all that stuff. And yet another addictive substance was sponsoring the program. I'm not going to go into whether it should be legal or not, but it just strikes me as interesting that, tobacco and nicotine are now known to be addictive substances and deadly to a degree. And yet, here we're dealing with marijuana and that. And, of course, marijuana these days is, in many states, perfectly legal, although federally it is still illegal. Just thought I'd mention that. Alrighty, coming up next in the news from 73 years ago today on Classic Radio Theater with Wyatt Cox.
This is an ad by BetterHelp. What are your self-care non-negotiables? It's hard to make time for the things that keep you healthy. But being consistent with self-care is like working a muscle. And when life gets crazy, that muscle keeps you strong. Therapy is the ultimate self-care. And BetterHelp makes it easy to get started with affordable online sessions you can do from anywhere.